I think it's time for an upgrade.
Perfect.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Shoot More. Today I want to talk through an upgrade decision I made in terms of the scope that's on my PRS rig. But before we talk about specifics of the Razor Gen 3, I want to talk about how we got here. I ended up needing more better glass for some of my other rifles, so I thought, I use this rifle pretty much every weekend. I'll take the Burris off of here, put it onto something else, and then I'll just upgrade the glass that was on here. Probably not a surprise to a whole lot of folks that there's a Razor Gen 3 sitting on this rifle. The scope's been out for a couple years. It's been heavily reviewed and is often compared to scopes that are above its price range. But that's kind of why I'm making this video. I was looking for reviews from people that have stepped up from those mid-range optics to more of a high-end, and I wanted to see their opinions on what they really gained. These reviews all talk about things like the quality of the controls, clarity of the glass, etc. But a lot of times they're coming from an angle of comparing like scopes, tangent thetas, Zecos, Night Force attackers, things of that nature. I'm very familiar with high quality glass in the camera world, but I haven't had the hands-on experience with rifle scopes that I have with camera gear. I don't have time behind a Zeco, tangent theta, and a Night Force to really be able to say, oh, okay, these are the quality improvements that you're getting on those super high-end platforms that you're not necessarily getting with, say, the Burris. So I wanted to take some time and give my initial impressions right out of the box of the Razor Gen 3 versus the scope that I've used for the last year or so, the Burris XTR3. I will end up doing an in-depth comparison between the two down the road when I have more time behind the Vortex. But I do just want to take some time to share my quick initial impressions. So if anybody else is in a similar situation looking to make the switch, they've got something to reference. The first question that probably comes to mind is why the Razor? And truth be told, it was not my first choice. I did buy a Burris XTR Pro, had it shipped to my house, and it was defective, new. Now just a disclaimer, this is not bashing Burris, but this is the second new defective Burris scope I've received in the last year and a half. The first one was the XTR2 that I returned and then purchased the XTR3. I've been happy with the XTR3, which is why I wanted to give the XTR Pro a go. It was supposed to be comparable to the Gen 3. So I placed the order for the XTR Pro, got it in, started messing with the controls and everything. And the first thing I realized was the parallax adjustment was not right. But you know what, maybe I was trying to sell myself that it would break in and it wasn't that big of a deal until I put the scope on a bag and started messing with the zoom ring. When you would try and rotate the zoom, the reticle would cant a couple degrees depending on which direction you were zooming in or out. At that point, I said, I'm done. I'm gonna go try a different brand. I've really enjoyed my XTR3 and I don't think I'll sell it, but I don't know that I will be giving Burris another try anytime soon, unfortunately. So that led me to the next question of, well, now what do I buy? To be fair, the Razor was always kind of on my short list for upgrade considerations, but I was trying to stay in the Burris family. I realized the Burris was defective on Wednesday of this week at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I thought I was dead in the water and I was just gonna have to remount the XTR3 and shoot that this weekend. I got to thinking, one of the companies that I buy my camera equipment through also sells rifle scopes and they have free expedited shipping. Jumped on there, they had the Razor in stock and on sale, so I pulled the trigger at 2:30 on Wednesday. It showed up at my house today about 2:30 on Friday. Plenty of time to get it mounted up, record this video, and we'll be shooting it at the match tomorrow. So initial impressions, what do I think? The packaging was phenomenal. A magnetic box, good foam, good presentation, everything is packed well. You get this customized card that says the scope was hand inspected with somebody's initials. that look real. It doesn't look like they just printed 1,000 of these cards and tossed them in the box. Another thing that I was really impressed with is the accessories that you get when you do buy a scope of this caliber. It feels like nowadays manufacturers are trying to cut corners as much as they can, so they're not including things like sunshades and scope caps and magnification levers and things of that nature, whereas the Vortex included all of that. You get the sunshade, you get the both front and rear flipping caps that also flip flat, which I think is a huge deal. You get a, I think they're called switch view throw lever, so you can kind of see through it if it's in a totally upright position. I love this thing, it's great. You also get 2 different size Allen keys. One is for installing the switch view, one is for setting the 0 stop on the turrets. And they've got big plastic handles on them. They're high quality, and I think it goes with the presentation of the rest of the product. So 10 out of 10, great job Vortex there. But nobody buys a scope like this for the packaging, so let's get into things that really matter, like the controls. One of the only real complaints I have with the XTR3 is the slop in the elevation turret. I don't know if it's the way that the turret's designed or the 0 stop system, but there's about 1/2 of slop in the elevation turret in the Burris. I never want to actually change the physical 0 setting on the scope, because getting the scope cap lined back up correctly to where it doesn't misalign with some of the numbers can be a real hassle. I think the Vortex is an obvious step up in the quality of the controls compared to the Burris. The clicks for the elevation and windage turrets are very tactile. I've heard people say that these elevation turrets have slop because of the locking mechanism. I don't find that to be true. I mean, I guess they move a little bit, but if that's what people are complaining about, then they would absolutely hate to ever own one of these XTR3s. The parallax knob is smooth. The illumination is also locking, so you pull this out, set it to whatever brightness you want, push it back in, and that way you're not bumping the settings when you're on a stage. The zoom ring is very smooth. I think this is probably tensioned about perfect. It's not gonna move on its own, but I also don't feel like I'm gonna turn the freaking scope in the mount when I'm trying to run this thing quickly. And I feel the same way about the windage turret as I do the elevation turret. They're both locking. The clicks are good on both. I think one point of criticism or potential dislike for the Razor for me, I don't know how I feel about the locking turret on elevation. Love the locking turret on windage. I don't dial windage. I set my 0 and that's it. I think I would personally prefer not having a locking elevation turret, but I'm gonna try it. I think you can get O-rings or mechanisms that will fit in this gap here that prevent this from locking. And I think you can also send the scope to Vortex and they will remove the locking mechanism if you request. So if that's something we want to do in the future, great. But for right now, it's not really a big concern. Moving on to reticles, I think one of the biggest things I liked about the Burris was the thin reticle. And that was kind of my apprehension about switching to a different scope. Vortex does not disappoint. This is the EBR7D MRAD reticle. Again, I've not shot this yet. I've just kind of messed around with it in the backyard, just kind of trying to look and get the eye relief set when mounting it. I don't think there's going to be any issue with the scope reticle being too thick and not being able to see impacts or anything like that. Big fan of the 0.2 subtensions. I think the biggest area where these two scopes are going to differ is the optical quality, aka the glass. Again, I haven't shot this yet, but I do have a pretty far distance that I can see out my back door. I set the scope up on a tripod on a bag and was just trying to look through it. And it's amazing what you can see at 36 power, fully zoomed in at about 640 yards. I feel like I could almost start counting the pine needles on a pine tree at that distance. That kind of clarity and resolution you just don't get with the Burris. The Razor definitely handles cutting through the mirage a lot better, but at the same time, I can see the mirage better. I don't know how to describe it. When I would try and look through the XTR3 and figure out what was going on with the Mirage before, the Mirage would look blurry almost, and it was hard to tell what it was doing in the scope unless it was extreme. The Razor, it's a lot easier to tell. And if you mag in, you can see through it better, but I can also see the Mirage better. Those kind of seem opposite to me. I want to take some more time and really kind of pay attention and see if I can get both of these in the same situation side by side. But that's just kind of my quick off the cuff comment. We'll see if that changes. Other than that, the clarity and the contrast on the Razor is definitely better than the XTR3, and the chromatic aberration. I will say I'm not sensitive to chromatic aberration. I deal with it a lot in the photography world, but it's almost non-existent in the Razor, whereas you'll see it on the XTR3. Even the Pro that I had that has now been sent back, it was pretty bad. Pretty happy there on that front. Overall, I think through this discussion, it is important to keep in mind that we are essentially talking about what is a $3,000 MSRP that you can regularly get brand new for $2,400, and against a, I think, $1,500 MSRP scope that you can regularly get for around $1,000. You would expect there to be a pretty significant increase in performance and quality from, you know, the less expensive scope to the higher end scope. But the question always is, are you getting your money's worth? And in this instance, my initial reaction, I think yes. The better quality of the controls, the optical quality, the accessories that you get with this, I feel totally comfortable with my purchase at this point. I haven't even touched on the Zero system yet because I haven't used it, but just knowing that it's a quick one screw and then you don't have to mess with resetting the dials or anything, I think is gonna be huge, but we can talk about that later in the more long-term review. Overall, right now in this moment, very excited, very happy with my purchase, and we're gonna get to try it out tomorrow in a match. So let me know if you have any questions specifically about the Razor or the XTR3. I hope you guys appreciate the content. Stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.